Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar titled Setting the Stage for a Proper Tile Installation. I'm Jim Olson with the National Tile Contractors Association, and I really want to welcome you and thank you for taking time out of your busy day to attend today's webinar sponsored by Sika. Before I introduce today's speaker, I want to remind you that during the webinar, you will be muted. Please use the questions area on your computer to type in your questions, and we'll answer those questions at the end of this presentation. If the audio is poor on your computer, either turn up the volume or call the number on the invite and listen on your phone. All of our NTCA webinars are available to watch at any time on the NTCA YouTube channel shortly after the webinars are presented, giving you easier access to watch and or share all current and past programs at your convenience. And you probably should just, subscribe to NTCA YouTube channel. It'll make it easy for you to see a new program comes up. So that'd be great. All right, very happy to introduce today's speaker, Brett Mauney. CTC and CTI is a Sika's National Technical Manager, managing the extensive technical training for SikaTile product line. Mauney's career stretches back to 1988, working all sides of the tile industry to include ceramic tile and setting materials, manufacturing, installation, sales, and distributions. Since 2019, he has provided comprehensive technical support for Sika's renowned tile setting materials. Brett, welcome. Look forward to a great presentation.
Thank you very much, Jim, as always. Happy to be here. Jim kind of went through my background here, technical manager for Sika Corporation. Been in the industry since 1988. That's 36, 35, 37 years. After a point in time, you stop counting. But I am based out of the Chicago area, and right in front of you there's my email address. Please write that down if you have any questions for me in regards to products, or as well as just technical, or in regards to the training that we're going to be going through today. So please bear with us, and we'll get going here. But one of the things that the description of this, and I'm glad everybody that's attending jumped on to see this, is I'm calling it setting the stage. We all have a process of how we go about an installation. Now it can be taken anywhere from the architectural aspects to the sales aspects, to the installation aspects, to a general contractor, everything. And so setting the stage is something that we're really trying to promote, and you'll see here in just a moment what I'm talking about with what stage means. But tiled areas, and I'm going to read these 3 paragraphs, not verbatim, but kind of give you an idea of something that we all know, but sometimes need to be reminded of. But from decorative tiled surfaces to highly functional tiled wall and floor finishes, tiling is one of the most popular surface finishing techniques used to enhance the appearance and functionality of all types of buildings and facilities. We all know tile can go virtually anywhere. As long as it's the right tile and the right products selected with that installation, it can last a lifetime. Second little bullet point here is crucial to select the right tile installation systems and methods for what I just said. For each area of each specific project, this should include proper surface prep, waterproofing, and joint sealing solutions for each area and tile to ensure high quality and durability. Once again, not only selecting the right tile, but having the correct products all the way from surface prep all the way up into your grouts. So we're going to talk about that through the presentation. Sika has developed a comprehensive range of surface preparation, waterproofing, tile adhesives, tile grouts, and useful ancillary products designed for use as integrated systems to achieve the optimum results. A lot of big words in there. You can tell I didn't write that particular bullet point. But again, stage is going to be something I hope that everybody walks away with remembering. So question, what is stage? Stage, not that we have enough acronyms in our industry, NTCNA, TCNA, CTI, ACT, I mean, all of those acronyms, we're going to add one more to it, and I hope you guys remember this one, and it's STAGE, S-T-A-G-E, and you're going to see exactly where we're going with stage here in just a moment. But we live in an industry with acronyms, so let's add another one to the list. With any project, there needs to be a plan. And that plan starts with knowing what we are getting into, whether it be selling the materials, selling the job, designing the job, or installing the job. It all starts with stage. So setting the stage really kind of gets us at the very beginning of that job when we're looking at it and how we want to assess that job as either a person selling the job, a salesperson selling the tile, architects, designers, all of it, especially the installers. So here's the acronym for stage. So we've done something very similar to this in the past, but we've expanded on it. And this is the one that I use more on a continual basis. And I teach everybody that I've ever touched on sales, whether they be new within the industry or old, is I teach them something very similar to this. And stage, of course, stands for S is a substrate, T for the type of tile, A for the adhesive or mortar, and in our case, G for grout, and then E for experience. E for experience, really, you'll see where we dial into that at the very end, and you'll kind of understand where that experience comes in and wraps into this whole stage acronym. So let's get started with stage. What type of substrate will be used? When we're talking to somebody, again, on sales or installation, you go look at a job, what's the substrate? Is it a concrete substrate? Is it a wood substrate? Is it gypcrete, wall, floor? As we all know, in some of the webinars I've done in the past, a substrate is anything that we're putting flooring on. So if we're tile on, really, if we're putting tile on a wall, that's a substrate. If we're putting on the ceiling, substrate, patio, substrate. So all those are considered substrates. And so when we're diving into this, we want to know certain things, what that substrate is, what's the condition of it? Is it new? Is it green? Is it old? Is it what we consider an adverse substrate? Does it have contaminants on it? What will it take to bring that substrate to industry standards? We know our industry standards. We all carry around our TCNA handbook, note that states and has the standards in it. Then once we know those things, it kind of comes down to what surface prep products will be needed. Do we need self-leveler? Do we need patching compounds, crack isolation membranes? So the S in substrate starts, but you can see where it starts to really pare down and go into a tree effect of what type of product, what condition the substrate's in, what are the industry standards that we need to bring that substrate to, and then what products do we need to work over or get to the industry standards for that substrate, depending on what type it is. So we go forward, then we go backward with it. So understanding substrate, and we're going to spend a lot of time on substrate prep in this section, or not as much in this section, but I've got a scenario at the very end that we're going to kind of throw this stage into effect and see how it really works with a scenario. So with that being said, substrates can come in many shapes and sizes. What is a substrate? And TCNA handbook defines it as the underlying support for the ceramic tile installation. So again, as I said a few moments ago, that substrate can be concrete, wood, gypcrete, drywall, CBU, mortar bed, and there's many more subcategories that go through that, but those are kind of the basic ones that we see every day. And again, walls, floors, ceilings, wherever we're putting that tile is what we're considering a substrate. So when we talk about substrates and bringing it to the industry standards, what are we using in those products? Substrate preparation products include patching compounds, self-leveling underlayments, deck muds, or a sampling of types of products that can be used to provide industry flatness tolerances. This is a big one here. ANSI A108.01 is the industry general requirements for subsurface and preparation by other trades. We know as an installer or the installers that are with us today that rarely do we get a floor that meets the standards of A108.01. Right below this, you'll see my little diagram pictures, that 1/4 inch and 10 for standard size tiles, anything under 15 inches, one single edge, and then that 1/8 inch maximum variation for most of the tile that's being installed today, especially on floors. That stringent gets down. So when we're talking about bringing it to industry standards, these are the things that we're talking about. Rarely do we get that floor that meets those industry standards. So we need to have the appropriate products, the right products, to be able to get that floor where it needs to be. So now we move to T. So what is T? Type of tile. Type of tile has really changed over the years. When I started in the industry, porcelain was rarely heard of, but it was a word out there. You heard of it, but most everything was ceramic. 12 by 12 tiles were big tiles. I remember packing orders when I worked for a manufacturer, and it was a 12 by 12 tile. I'm thinking, man, this guy must be rich. These tiles are huge. 12 by 12 tiles have kind of gone the way of the dodo bird, and everything's either mosaics or large tiles. And so we need to know in that installation, what type of tile am I installing? Is it a large format tile? Is it a paver tile, which 8 by 8 pavers are starting to come back in that. And we're going to talk about those in just a little bit. You got glass tiles, porcelain tiles, large tiles, you got plank tiles that are 6 foot long, you got thin gauge porcelain panels. So we need to know what type of tile, what's the size of that tile. Is it an LHT tile, large and heavy tile? What are we considering? LHP, large and heavy plank. So what is the type of tile? And is it anything out of ordinary? When I say anything out of ordinary, is it a jade green marble, which we know is inherent to what I call potato chipping when it gets wet. So you got certain marbles that are in that category. Is it a mosaic that has a resin mesh backing on it that maybe might needs to be installed with an epoxy? So we need to know not only the tile type and the size, but is there anything ordinary from that or about that particular tile? And then what type of setting materials and grouts will be needed. So once we know those, then we're going to have a really good idea of what tile and grout is going to be needed for that installation. So when we got S for our substrate, we've got our preparation products, we got T for tile, we know our tile at that point, leads us into knowing what type of mortar that we're going to need to install that tile. So setting the stage again, type of tile. When we talk about tiles, we kind of ran through those a little bit. The list can be long, it can be confusing. There's ceramic, porcelain, pressed floor tiles, glass tiles, quarry tile, natural stone, pavers, different shapes. We got metal tiles out there. We're seeing all different types of tiles in our industry than what we saw 20 plus years ago. So in that, keeping that in mind, as a manufacturer, we need to manufacture products that work with those. As an installer, your installation techniques might change a little bit. The mortars that you're using definitely can change a little bit. We may not be using a thin set mortar for a large format tile. We all know why that reason is, but deciding on what type of tile it is or what type of tile you're presented with really plays a big picture in choosing the correct mortar for that application. So type of tile in that stage acronym is pretty important to help us kind of dive down to see what we're going to need. So here we've got adhesive A. So this really now starts to take what we had for surface or substrate for type of tile. Now we're looking at the adhesives. Where is the installation? Is it interior, exterior? What is it, a wet area? Is it a floor tile? Is it a wall tile? Again, what is that substrate? Is it a gypcrete? Do we need to put something down prior to that installation with a gypcrete? Or is it a surface where a higher modified mortar is going to be more required than a lower modified mortar? And then again, what is the tile size? What size of the tile? So adhesives really come down to what the substrate that we're going over with, what the kind of performance characteristics we're looking for, what type of tile we're bonding to, and the size of the tile makes a huge difference or a huge kind of part of that story in selecting the appropriate setting material. So when we're in this and we know that we've got concrete substrate, then we've got our type of tile is a porcelain 12 by 24, that's a pretty popular size. It helps us really start to decide what type of mortar that we're going to need. So this is where a lot of people kind of get my little sign there, disoriented, perplexed, unclear, confused, unsure, lost. There are many types of setting materials. So choosing the correct tile mortar is a crucial part of a successful installation. I travel all over the United States in different areas, and different areas prefer their different types of mortars that are being used out there. I've still got areas in the United States that still use a non-modified mortar with a milk or latex additive to it. But then you've got the polymer modifieds, the ANSI 118.4s and 11s, up to the 15s that are already modified. Then they all have their certain characteristics to those. LHT mortars are dominant right now in the marketplace because it's a, I don't want to say it's a one mortar to do everything, but it's a mortar that can do a lot. You've got epoxy mortars out there, 118.3, organic adhesives. Even though mastics, you know, some people cringe when you talk about mastics, but there is a place for mastics used in the appropriate applications. So again, selecting the proper type of mortar for that application is huge in making it a long-lasting installation. So we get the G. So G comes in as the grout. So now what type of grout am I using? Where's the installation? Is it interior, exterior, wall, floor, wet area, commercial, heavy? There's your traditional grouts. What is required? Chemical resistance, high performance, what size are the tiles and the grout joints? I had somebody yesterday tell me that, oh my gosh, did you know that XYZ manufacturer's coming out with 1/32 inch spacers? It's like, yeah, I heard that, but really that's a non-go in our industry. Tile size, tile warpage, and caliber determine the size of spacers that or grout joints that we're supposed to have on those jobs. But we know what the homeowner wants, and what the homeowner wants, typically the homeowner gets. So we need to know those things. Where's it going? Is it going in a commercial kitchen? Do I need to look at epoxy grouts that are commercial rated? Is it a standard bathroom at the Brady Bunch house? Do I need to look at a chemical resistant grout? Do I need to look at a high performance grout? So those are things to look in there. So when we decide, look at the grouts and we talk about the grouts, we're looking at either Portland cement, which are your standard, what we consider our standard base grouts, the 118.6 grouts. They come in sanded, non-sanded traditionally. High performance grouts are 118.7. Those are going to be your grouts that have a little bit more density to them. They dry harder, they dry a little bit quicker, they tend to resist efflorescence. They're truer to their color, or they hold color better, and they're a little less finicky on the job site. Then of course you have epoxy grouts, which if anybody knows me, I'm an epoxy person. I love epoxy grouts, and I love the grout that the epoxy we have. And then there's ready to use acrylic grouts. There's no real ANSI standard for that particular product at this moment in time, but I'm sure there will be. But they've really have come a long way. They used to be started off as a urethane, and they moved over to acrylic, so they're easier to use. But once again, you can use those in the wrong application. So we want to make sure that these products are being used or being chosen for the right application and the right usage. So E, what is the experience of the installer? So what is the experience? Is it a installer that is a fly-by-night installer, a one bucketeer, a union contractor, a large commercial company? Is it a handyman? Who's doing the job, and what are they capable of? Has the installer used these types of products before? That's a big question. Have they used epoxies before? Have they used the high performance grouts? Because there are some characteristics to the high performance grouts that they need to know. Could this be an opportunity for a product knowledge training session? That really goes more towards that distributor or manufacturer that's looking at this and says, okay, is this an opportunity for me to get in there and teach these people, you know, our ways, the way of the industry, to bring them up to speed? And then what are the products and tools required? There are certain grout floats, certain trowels for certain size tiles, coverages, and all those things. So again, that experience is pretty darn important. So when we tag everything together here, it's setting the stage, STAGE. When you apply the stage method, it will provide the right questions to ask yourself when choosing surface preparation materials, adhesives, and grouts. The performance and expectations of these products all hinge on choosing the right products for the appropriate application. That can't be defined anymore. And what we're trying to achieve with stage is we're really wanting to know, what is that substrate? What is that type of tile that we're installing? What needs to be done on that substrate for that particular tile? If it's what we consider a standard size tile, 15 inches and smaller, do I need to bring that substrate to 1/4 and 10? Or if it's a large format tile, do I need to go to 1/8 and 10? So the substrate and the type of tile in what you're using. Is there existing cracks in it? Do I need to use a crack isolation membrane? Am I going to go with a full coverage method, or am I going to go with a partial coverage method? The adhesive, what am I bonding to? And then of course the grout, and then the experience in that. That grout plays an important role in this. You know, I'm sure a lot of us have seen somebody make a tile selection in 30 minutes and then spend 4 days trying to pick out the appropriate grout color. If I could see you guys, I could probably see some heads shaking. But as a manufacturer, what is the only product that we manufacture that the end user sees? And that's grout. We are starting to see a heavy rise in the high performance grouts and epoxy grouts because tiles are getting bigger, so less grout's used, so the cost goes down in that sense of what's being used on the job. But I think people are starting to understand that that cost is a huge savings in the end of that installation. So it's something they can pass on with confidence to the installer, or I'm sorry, to the end user or the homeowner or job site owner, and feeling that this grout's going to look good and last a long, long time. So we're going to do a little scenario here, and typically I do this in a live scenario when I'm standing in front of people, but we're going to give this an attempt today. I've got a scenario here that we're giving in just a moment. Then we're going to kind of go through this and show how Stage is going to direct us in what we're going to be needing for this particular job. So again, the questions we're asking: what is the substrate? What type of tiles? What's the adhesives? What type of grouts? And then who is doing the install and what is their experience? So here's our scenario. It's a residential, it's new construction, entryway, kitchen floor, backsplash, full bathroom with shower, and an upstairs laundry room. So that first question we ask, what are the substrates? So these are the substrates that we're given, and you guys can play along with me as we go. Entryway, it's a slab on grade. Kitchen floor, slab on grade. We're doing a backsplash, which is drywall. The bathroom, outside shower, it's an upstairs bathroom, so we can kind of tell that by what's going to be on that substrate. Outside shower, the area, toilet area, cabinet area, is 3/4 inch tongue and groove exterior grade plywood and 16 on center. Shower floor, it's a pitch to drain, so more than likely we're going to be doing a mud bed. Shower walls are going to be CVU, cement backer units. Laundry room in this application is another upstairs laundry room. We're starting to see that in a lot of newer home construction, and that's a 3/4 inch tongue and groove exterior grade plywood, and I didn't put my 16 on center, but 16 on center there. So now that we know what our substrates are, we're going to be looking at this saying, okay, do these substrates meet that, first and foremost, those ones upstairs, meet that allowable deflection? Are they in accordance with IRC or IBC? Ceramic tile shall not exceed L over 360, natural stone L over 720. So we don't know our tile yet, so we don't know where we need to be within those parameters. But one of the things we need to start looking at for the upstairs laundry room and bathroom is the deflection in the floors. Is there deflection present? And what are we going to need to do about that? So now in this S for substrate, we are looking at, again, not only for that deflection in the wood substrates, we're looking for that substrate tolerance flatness on the concrete substrate. So that kitchen area is going to be probably a fairly large area. We want to know, A, what type of tile that we're using, so that way I know, do I need to be in that 1/4 and 10, or do I need to be for a large format tile and be that 1/8 and 10? So again, these are questions we don't know yet. So a little note here on the bottom: as tile size increase, the effect of substrate irregularities are compounded. So we all know that the larger the tile, the flatter the floor needs to be. So still in this area. So we're now looking at this, we're still in S for substrate. So if I've got a slab on grade and we're not sure if it meets that tolerance of 1/4 and 10 or 1/8 and 10, we're looking at what are we going to need to bring it to that installation? A patching compound or a leveling compound, or one of those types of products to bring that up to it. Do we use mortars, our thin sets or LHT mortars, to level out a floor? Absolutely not. We're using the appropriate products to do this job. Crack isolation membrane. You know, we are a manufacturer of crack isolation membranes, just like there's a lot of other manufacturer of crack isolation membranes. And we look at crack isolation membranes as insurance. So you either got existing cracks or soon to be cracks, because what type of substrates are there in industry? And there's two. That's cracked and gonna crack. So that crack isolation membrane, we recommend it on every single tile application that's going over a concrete substrate. Crack isolation membranes will help alleviate that crack or new crack, existing or new crack, from telegraphing through that installation. So for that entryway slab, we're looking at a patching compound and a crack isolation membrane. Kitchen floor, slab on grade. So we're going to be possibly looking again, patching compound and a crack isolation membrane, or a self-leveler in there. Backsplash, drywall. We're going to pull the drywall. We're going to replace it with a better product, a cement backer unit. So now we look at the bathroom, the outside the shower area, that 3/4 inch tongue and groove EGP. We're going to be looking at a sealant and a crack isolation membrane. Now, it could be a CBU, it could be an uncoupling mat, it could be any of those. We manufacture a crack isolation membrane that can be used over exterior grade plywood or over OSB. The sealant is basically to fill in that 1/8 inch tongue and groove gap that's present. So that way we can bridge right over those joints in the substrate using a crack isolation membrane. So that's what we're using on this job. Shower floor, we're going to pitch to drain. So we're going to use a deck mud and a waterproofing. Now that waterproofing can be liquid applied, it can be a sheet membrane, or whatever you're comfortable in using out there. Again, we're a membrane company, so waterproofing membrane, liquid apply would be our choice. Shower walls, CBU. So again, it's a cement backer unit. We're going to use a patching compound if we need to bring that wall into tolerance. And I think a lot of people forget that those walls still need to carry that same stringent or tolerance for that 1/4 and 10 or 1/8 and 10. So we need to look at that. So we might need a patching compound to fill in those low spots in that wall to create a perfectly flat wall. And then on top of that, we're going to put our waterproofing membrane over that patching compound on the walls just for extra protection. Laundry room. Again, it's a 3/4 inch tongue and groove, exterior grade plywood. Again, the sealant to fill in those 1/8 inch tongue and groove gaps, and then waterproofing membrane to go over the top of that. Now, if you noticed versus the outside the shower where I had a crack isolation membrane, the laundry room, I'm doing a waterproofing membrane because I want it to be waterproof. There's a massive amount of water, and we all know that sometimes your washing machine can leak. So we're going to take that waterproofing and we're actually going to bring it up the wall 4 inches and put a base on the wall. So we know what we're doing there in that aspect. So it's 3/4 inch tongue and groove, exterior grade plywood for that laundry room, sealant, and a waterproofing membrane. So now, what types of tile? I tried to throw in some that are going to be a little bit different, and I'm going to explain this in just a few minutes as we get to these when we're looking at adhesives. But the entryway slab on grade, we're doing 18 by 18 honed Rojo Alicante. If you guys aren't sure what Rojo Alicante is, that's one of the few reddish orange, kind of a burnt orange, depends on what quarry you're getting it out of, but it's a beautiful, beautiful reddish orange tile with a lovely crystal vein running through it. Slab on grade for the kitchen. We're doing a 12 by 24 porcelain. Backsplash is going to be multi-size glass mosaics. Bathroom, outside shower, we're doing an 8 by 8 cement paver. Shower floor, pitch to drain. It's going to be a mud bed. So then we're going to use 2 by 2 porcelain mosaics. That's what the customer chose for slip purposes. Shower walls are going to be cement backer unit, just a simple 3 by 6 white body tile. And then laundry room is going to be 3/4 inch tongue and groove, exterior grade plywood. We've got the patching compound membrane. Now we're using a 12 by 24 porcelain, and there's going to be a bull nose that goes with that we're going to turn up and run that as a base. So now we know our tiles. So we know our substrates, we know our tiles. Now it comes down to selecting the appropriate mortar or adhesive or what we're going to be using to stick these products with. So on that entryway, that slab on grade, 18 by 18 honed Rojo Alicante. Now, I know, and I'm sure a lot of y'all know out there, green marbles and red marbles can have a tendency to be very water sensitive and either loss of bond or potato chipping. But there's also another thing with Rojo Alicante that I mentioned before. Sometimes Rojo Alicante comes with a netting on the back of it that is resined to it because that crystal vein that runs through it can typically be an easy breaking point during shipping. So by looking at this marble, we know that there's some characteristics to it. We're going to go ahead and automatically assume that it has that netting with that resin on the back of it, and we're going to recommend, or we're going to be using an epoxy mortar 118.3. So we know an epoxy mortar is going to stick to that. We know for the water sensitivity of that particular marble, we're not going to have any issues. So we're using an epoxy mortar. So we've decided on that. Kitchen floor, slab on grade, 12 by 24 porcelain. So we've got a membrane down. We've got our crack isolation membrane down after we've brought the floor up to tolerances. And we're using an LHT mortar, 118.15. We're going to the high performance mortar that we're using in this. We've got our non-slump category to it. So that way we can really use that 1/2-inch trowel for those tight grout joints that these customers now want these days. And it's going to have the body to hold that material without shrinkage. We're able to adjust our lippage on these and have a beautiful installation. Backsplash, CBU, multi-size glass mosaics with a resin mesh. We see a lot of that out there. We've had cases where we even have seen recently down in South Texas, we did a job, a courthouse with a 1x2 split face that had a resin mesh on the back of it. And we used our epoxy for that installation. So we're using an epoxy to stick to that resin. So that way we make sure that we're bonding and getting a great bond with that. Outside shower slab on grade, or did I write outside shower? Outside shower shouldn't be slab on grade. I apologize for that. That is going to be a patching compound with a crack isolation membrane, 8x8 cement paver. So 8x8 pavers are starting to come into a lot of use. If you're not familiar with what I'm talking about, you'll see them. They're 8x8. They're fairly thick, up to, can be 1/2 inch, 5/8 inch thick. They used to be called concrete pavers. We just call them cement pavers. And some of them even coming in porcelain. Now, we all know the rule of thumb with LHT mortars that kind of defining line of tile size is 15 inches or greater on one side, move to an LHT mortar. But part of that definition for the H is heavy. And we know that these 8x8 pavers by themselves, 8x8 1/2-inch paver is fairly heavy. But how many of those does it take to make a square foot? And that should be 2.5 pieces. 2.5 pieces make a square foot. So now we've got 2.5 pieces and we're well over exceeding the weight of what a thin set mortar can use. And so we need to make sure that we're using an LHT mortar. So it's an 8x8 cement paver. We're using ANSI 118.15 LHT mortar. Shower floor, pitch to drain, mud bed, 2x2 porcelain tile. We're going over a waterproofing membrane. We're going to use a modified mortar or an LHT mortar. We've already got LHT mortar on the job, so we might as well continue using the LHT mortar with it, or the 118.15 mortar. Shower walls, 3x6 white body. You can use a modified or an LHT 118.15 mortar. Again, we've got 118.5 on the job, so we're going to continue with that. And the other thing with that 118.5 versus just its traditional modified mortar is, you know, we've got that non-sag now on the walls. Even though it's a 3x6, it's a fairly light tile, it's a white body. We'll be able to hold that tile in place as we're stacking. And so with that being said, that white body is also pretty important to know too, because white bodies are a lot more absorbent than a porcelain tile or a glass tile. So an LHT mortar typically has a longer adjustability time, meaning when I set it in place, I can come back and adjust it if I need to, especially for some of the handmade tiles that may not be perfect caliber products. Laundry room, 3/4 inch tongue and groove, exterior grade plywood, 12x24 porcelain. We're going to go ahead and go with that LHT mortar 118.15. So when we look at what we've got on this, is it sounds and looks like a lot, but if we just dive down into it, we've got an epoxy mortar that we're using in the entryway and backsplash. Then we've got a 118.15 mortar that we're really using for everything else. So we're going big time on this. That floor is not going to go anywhere with it, but I hope you understand how this is helping us dive down into the appropriate products for the appropriate tile, for the appropriate substrate, for the appropriate application. And you can see where this can even go with a commercial job. If it's a commercial kitchen area where they're setting pavers and it requires, you know, something that's going to be chemical resistant underneath and in the grout joints. So when we look at grout on this, the G in stage is what type of tiles we've got. Entryway, 18 by 18 Hone Rojo Alicante. It's an 1/8 inch grout joint. We're going to use a non-sanded 118.16. Okay, it is honed, so we're not going to really worry about scratching the surface with an aggregate in a product, but they do have a tight joint in there. They want this nice smooth finish to go with it, so we're using a non-sanded grout. Kitchen floor, 12 by 24 porcelain, 3/16 inch grout joint. High performance grout, 118.7. We want something in that kitchen that's going to last, that's going to help resist stains for spillage, something that's going to be dense and strong and really true to color. Backsplash, multi-size glass mosaics, 1/8 inch grout joint. Backsplash, they wanted non-staining. They wanted something that's going to resist this Italian household that's cooking spaghetti and sauces all the time, splashing all over the place. So not only are we going to have a impervious tile on the glass, we're going to have an epoxy grout on the back of it. So we'll have a bulletproof backsplash that this Italian family can cook till their heart's content without ruining their grout or tile in the background. Bath, outside the shower, those cement pavers, 3/16 inch joint, 118.7, high performance grout. Showers, if you're anything like my household where you have a bunch of boys living in it, sometimes there's some aiming issues, and that high performance grout's going to help resist that and keep from looking dingy and cruddy after a long time of use. Shower floor, 2x2. Again, shower floors, people don't realize it. They get the brunt of our dirty feet when we get in the shower. So again, we're going with a 118.7 grout, so a high performance grout. Shower walls, we've got it on hand. We're going to use that 118.7 grout. So it's floors and walls in that shower. Laundry room, we're going to switch over to a ready to use grout, just to be different. Ready to use, we can basically open the bucket. We've got a product called Ultima on the SikaTile line that you open it, it's ready to use. Pull the plastic off, you go, you grout. Has a little bit of flexibility to it, but it is stain resistant, does not need to be sealed, easy to clean up, and it's really a hard grout to mess up. We could use that ready to use grout in some of these other applications, but we're putting it in the laundry room on the laundry floor. So stage E, experience. Who's our installer on this job? Installer is a licensed tile contractor, and he is a ACT certified installer in business for 20 years. So we know this guy's got the guns to do the job. It's really important for those that are online with us when selecting installer that you choose somebody based by experience, what they're capable of doing, and not necessarily price. Installers, you know, in speaking on the behalf, I've got an installation background. A lot of us don't like to be called installers or contractors. Some of us like to be called artists because we're going in and we're leaving a art project in your application or whatever job that we're doing. So, you know, the installers, be proud of who you are, go out there, get it, and make sure, as always, that we're doing the right application. And I hope Stage really brings something together for not only the installers when they're looking at jobs, but for the people selling the jobs, for the architects, for the distributors, and being able to qualify that installation with the appropriate products. That way it is a lifelong installation that we're doing there. I know, and I know installers feel the same way. When we do a job, we want it to last as long, or if not longer, than the actual home is standing there. So again, I hope Stage really gets you guys in a mindful thinking way of qualifying the job and understanding it. So keys to success: define the area of use, that product selection, expansion joints. We didn't talk about those in here. Expansion joints can be an entire webinar on its own, and I believe there are some that are already done on the NTCNA website, YouTube channels, but expansion joints, as we all know, are extremely important. Saw cuts are extremely important. The lippage guidelines, grout joint sizes, and as well as the specifications. So these are all keys to success to make sure that installation, again, lasts a lifetime and the end user is completely 100% satisfied with what you've done. So again, just to summarize, S, substrate, T is the type of tile. What are we using? A is the adhesive. What type of adhesive are we going to be using on this job? Grout what type of grout are we using on it? What does this job call for? Do I need chemical resistance? Do I need stain resistance? Are they going to worry about just using a Portland cement and sealing it later? What's going to be the type of grout that we're doing or recommending for this particular job? And then of course that experience rolls back down to what I just said a moment ago, the experience of the installer doing the installation. So that's it, that covers it. I appreciate everybody being here and thank you so much. I believe we're going to hang on the line here for a little while and answer some questions that you guys might have.
Brett, thank you. That was phenomenal. I love the STAGE acronym for that. It makes it easy to remember. That was great. And yes, we do have some questions here. Let's look at them and see what we got here. Our first one is, what should STAGE be in regards to a fireplace, surround, and hearth?
Well, fireplace, surround, and hearth, you're looking at, first and foremost, what is a substrate? Is it existing drywall that's there? Are we going to be pulling the drywall and putting a cement backer unit up, something that can resist the heat, something that's rated for high heat, as well as mortars around that shower, around that fireplace. They're all cement products, so they're all going to have a high heat tolerance. They're not in it, which is a whole different case, but around it. It's really comes down to the substrate. What are we going over? Is it going to be the drywall or is it going to be a cement board? And then type of tile. It's if I in that situation, I actually wouldn't go with an epoxy. Epoxy's melting point, I could be wrong. Somebody can correct me here. Typically, it's around 300 degrees. We know typically it doesn't get that hot outside of a fireplace, but it could right around the edges. So an epoxy is something that I would stay away from that and go with a cementitious grout. I hope I answered that question correctly.
I was talking, but I was muted. Sorry about that. For the resin mesh back Rojo Alicante tile, what are your thoughts on a primer and a LHT A118.15 mortar instead of an epoxy mortar?
There are some primers out there. We have one, and I know some other manufacturers, these multi-purpose primers that have an aggregate kind of built into it, and they're made to go over impervious surfaces. We've had people take and use the primer on the back of these, and then use a modified LHT type of mortar, 118.15 or 0.11, LHT mortar to do that. So a primer is something that is capable of achieving that bond to it. I still like personally the epoxies better for it because the epoxy is a chemical and mechanical bond to that particular resin mesh on the back of it, and I just feel like I'm going to get a far better bond, but we have had applications done with primers on the back of these resin backs.
Before I go to the next one, I just want all the attendees to know, if you look at your questions or the chat screen, I did put my email address on there. If you have a request to receive the YouTube version of this afterwards, the archive version of it, please send me an email later. All right, so next one is, what are your thoughts about setting and grouting light colored marble mosaics with epoxy on shower floor?
Light color natural stone on a shower floor.
And they're mosaics.
Mosaics. If you're getting the coverage, I guess here's the way that I would look at it. That's actually a great kind of a stumper of a question, but I got to think about it here for a moment. I would be using a white epoxy. We manufacture and a grout or an epoxy grout that is not only a grout, but it is also a mortar. I would choose a white color. I would make sure that I'm getting complete coverage on the back of it so that we're not seeing through those light marbles. As we all know, the white Carreras, they can be a little translucent in color. And then epoxy grout for it, long as we're following our perimeter EJ 171 for that around the perimeter joints, I would be okay with an epoxy grout as well.
So white adhesive or mortar and white grout. Can they use the white epoxy underneath it and go with a light colored grout with it, or would they have to stay white?
No, they don't have to. They can change colors of the grout. You can go with any color you want in the grouts.
I just wanted to make sure.
The white epoxy underneath it would be almost necessary.
Okay.
Just because of the translucency of the stones.
Okay, thank you. I have to say that I have some construction going on in my house. I'm sorry if you were not able to receive or hear all of the answers that Brett gave, because he gave great answers. But please, I sent my email address out. Send me an email and we'll make sure you get the copy of this presentation. All right, Brett, that was all the questions. Thank you for another great presentation, and I'm really sorry, everyone, that you had to listen to this hammering in the background.
And thank you, everybody, for taking your time to be here today.
Great. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.